Joe Zingales is the founder of Team Zingales Realty in Merrimack Valley area and southern New Hampshire. Joe has been helping people buy and sell real estate for over 20 years and has a genuine passion for real estate. And he's assisting people in the middle of a very complicated and very troublesome process. We were just talking about that before we were recording. I just bought and sold. Joe's in the process of building. It can get very emotional. So Joe's been doing that for 20 years. Joe, thanks for chatting today. Before we dive into the more specifics of your technology, do you remember what inspired you to get into real estate?
Well, first and foremost, Elena, thank you so much for having me on today. It means the world. Someone of your caliber actually taking time to speak with me. But so thank you again. And for everybody watching, meet my twin. I woke up with a sty in my eye, but I didn't want to cancel. Anyway, to answer your question, I got into real estate roughly 22, 23 years ago. And what inspired me was I was in the tech world as a network admin for Sun Microsystems. And I just felt I could do better. I was like that caged animal with all this energy built up. And for someone to tell me, you can only make this amount of money per year, that was, crazy to me. So I kind of took, things into my own hands and created my own destiny. And I spoke to a lot of people I knew were in real estate, and they were pretty successful. And they told me, Joe, you're going to do great. You have that personality. You just got to apply yourself. So I did. I took the exam. I went to classes. I took the exam, got licensed, and I started with Coldwell Banker back then. And I was a sponge. I just stayed in the office, went on meetings, went on showings, and just absorbed all the information I could. And then I just implemented.
That's great. Do you remember where you got your first deal from?
Yes. Believe it or not, I thought it was a prank. I sent out postcards and the guy's name, I remember it's Stanley. I won't mention his last name, but his first name was Stanley. And he called, he was a elderly fellow. And he says, I'd like to put my house on the market. And I thought it was one of my friends pranking me. I says, yeah, right. Okay. He says, I'm sorry. I says, is this Stanley serious? And he said, yeah. So I went and I remember it vividly. I went to his house and sure enough, it was a dated house, but we got it done. It was awesome.
That's great. From a postcard. You're the first person I spoke to where your first deal came from a postcard.
Yeah.
And it was someone you had never met. It was just a random selected area you wanted to farm, and you started sending postcards.
Yeah. It was a pretty desired area. And, I asked him, what made you choose me? He says, you're the only one that sent me a postcard. This is back, 2002, 2003. So it was just astonishing to me that he would just call. Because back then it was sort of, referrals and cold calling and door knocking. I wouldn't door knock today, but back then it was okay.
Mm-hmm. So when you started out in real estate, were you by yourself, solo agent?
I was.
And now you have a team. So how did you transition from by yourself to growing a team over those 20 years?
So I read a lot of books and I knew where I wanted to be in the future. I also knew that in order to get to there, I couldn't do it alone. I had to group myself with like-minded individuals. And I created Team Zingales with another person who actually wasn't a family member. It was just a friend of mine who we started the team together. She has since moved on to a different organization, but through perseverance and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, here we are today. My sister's my partner. My son is my COO. My wife is our controller. It's a family little boutique shop, and we love it.
That's great. Do you have any other agents in the team, or is it you four kind of running the engine in the show?
No, we have in total we have 8 agents.
Okay. How did you find those 8 agents?
Um, we're somewhat picky with who we select. We're picky now. Back 2 years ago, I can't say the same, but um, so we monitor their production. I typically go on recruiting calls, meet with them, and just get a feel for to see if that individual fits our culture.
And you own a brokerage now, is that correct?
Yes, I'm not the broker owner. My sister is, but we own it together. Yes.
So what made you decide to leave Coldwell Banker and start your own brokerage?
Well, Coldwell Banker is where I first started. From Coldwell Banker, I went to Remax for an umpteen years. I loved Remax. From Remax, I basically, not to quote The Godfather, but I got an offer I couldn't refuse with Century 21. And from Century 21, we opted to open our own boutique brokerage.
What lessons have you learned since opening your own brokerage?
Oh, God. Where should I begin? There's a lot of things that you need to know in between the lines that nobody really tells you about. Lots of liability, lots of insurances. If you've run a team, you know how agents react or their mannerisms and things. But when you're a brokerage, it's a little different than running a team. So you have to implement those things as well. If I had to do it all over again, I probably would do the same thing.
That was going to be my next question. Would you still do it?
I would probably do the same thing. Yeah.
That's good. So I've seen a trend where people are opening brokerages, but they're not a traditional brokerage like a Remax or Century 21. They operate more like a teamage where everyone works together. The agents aren't operating independently. Is that how your business is structured?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're a very close-knit family element. Every agent that comes into our organization, we treat like a family member. That's why it's important that they fit our culture. We train like crazy. Our support system, when Rosanna, who's my sister, and my son, Mateo, my wife's Teresa, when we all sat down and decided to open up a brokerage, we wanted to make sure that it was agent-centric, meaning the agents got everything they needed to go out there and do their job. And that's what we did.
You said you train like crazy. What does that mean? What sorts of training do you provide?
We do lunch and learns every other week. We have industry professionals meet with our agents either in person or via Zoom. With all the NAR changes that are coming down the pike, especially in a couple of weeks, we've been training like crazy to make sure that they are aware of all the forms, the new forms. In fact, we just had a lunch and learn today on the new forms, more of a breakfast and learn. So it's important to us that they know what's going on and they're prepared, because at the end of the day, they wear this, which means they represent us. So it would behoove us to make sure that they have everything they need to be successful.
And do you require your agents to opt into your technology? Are they accountable to you? How does that work, since they're technically in a brokerage, but you operate more like a team?
That's a real good question. Yes, we want them all, and there's no secret. I guess there's no secret. We use Follow Up Boss, and I'm sure we're going to get into that in a second. So we make sure that they utilize Follow Up Boss. We don't charge them for it. That's one of the perks of working with us. And I am a Follow Up Boss fanatic. I'm in there multiple times a day for hours on end, just making sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, because there's nothing worse than not following up with a lead. I'd rather you not even have that lead, because if you don't follow up with a lead, you're setting a precedence, and that precedence is very hard to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why being picky on who you choose and fitting your culture is so important. Is when it counts, they need to prove and continue with the work ethic, essentially, to stay in your teamage, in your brokerage. So you
Absolutely.
use Follow Boss as your CRM. Do you also provide any sorts of leads for you and your agents? And if so, what would you say is your brokerage's main one or two sources of business?
We're a huge referral office, um, but outside of that, we were utilizing Zillow. We actually just stopped for various reasons. Um, but we are organically generating our own leads, and it's absolutely magnificent. I should have done this years ago.
When you say organically generating leads, is that on social media or from your website? How is that working?
It's a combination, social media, website, but we utilize, I can just tell you, it's an AI generated lead generation system that we developed.
Oh, you developed it yourself. Oh, interesting. I'm curious to learn more about that. Maybe another time. Okay,
Absolutely.
so you generate leads organically for your agents. Are they primarily buyers or sellers, or is it a combination of both?
It can be whatever we determine it to be. We have different niches that we operate in. But yes, mostly buyers during these times because it's a seller's market, but we're seeing a shift over to sellers.
So since you're doing your own organic leads, am I safe to assume that you don't pay any companies to generate leads for you at all?
Nothing. I don't pay
Wow.
any. I pay the platform that we utilize, but outside of that, yeah, there's enough out there that for free that people can generate their own leads. They don't
That's good.
need the Zillows of the world, not knocking Zillow, but they don't need that.
Yeah, that's great to hear that you've been able to develop that. I think you're the first person I've talked to that generates your own leads through an AI technology. So that's really neat.
You
Have
have to.
you patented it? Is it just private? Are you going to sell it? What's your plans there?
I don't plan on selling it. It's very. I mean, anybody can do it. It's just if you read up on it and educate yourself and just have some foresight, you could do it yourself.
And did you take that project on yourself, or did someone else in the team help you with that?
My son and I usually uh, take these projects on. I've been looking at organic lead generation for probably the good part of 4 or 5 years now. Um, so once AI really came into effect, we implemented it into our platform, and it's been working great, honestly.
That's great to hear. How long have you been using it?
Roughly about 6 months, the
Okay.
AI portion, but the other lead generation stuff we've been using for well over 3 years.
Okay. So you use Follow Up Boss, you generate your own organic leads and referrals. Do you use any other types of technologies like a transaction management technology, project management tools? What other resources do you have online?
Once a lead comes in and once it gets, once it goes under agreement, we do utilize a transaction coordinator that she does not have access to our follow-up boss. We're not there yet. Um, I should say, well, yeah, we're not there yet. We will be there because I'd like to keep everything under one roof, only for tracking purposes. But outside of that, we don't utilize any other platforms.
That's great. I love simplicity. The less tools and logins you have, the better.
The old KISS model, that's
Yes.
it,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And we're huge proponents of work smarter, not harder.
For sure.
So thankfully with you, and you saved me a ton of time and aggravation with your action plans and automations and whatnot. You're an angel sent to us from heaven.
Thanks. So, how did you, switching gears then into your CRM, how did you find Follow Up Boss and what made you decide to make Follow Up Boss your CRM?
So I think we found Follow Up Boss through a referral. One of our colleagues in the field here was using it, and they said, "Joe, you gotta look into this." So we did. We looked at other ones. We were using another one that was not quite user friendly. So we made the switch, and it was great. But here we are. We had this huge monster that we didn't know how to tame. And in comes Elena. And I learned about you online. I think I submitted a post, and everybody said, "You got to talk to Elena. Elena's the one, that can get you going." And I took their advice, and I implemented all of your strategies, your action plans, and automations. And even after we implemented that, I can still come back to you and your team with questions, and boom, you're right there. You guys are great.
That's so awesome to hear. Thank you. So, how long did you use Follow Up Boss before we got connected?
Oh, I think it was just like 3 months because I was trying to work harder, not smart. I said to myself, this can't be that difficult. And yeah, 3 months later, yeah, I got you guys involved.
Yeah. So you mentioned you've implemented action plans, automations. Can you give an overview of what that looks like? What does an action plan mean? What does an automation mean? For those who don't know.
So sure, when you get a lead, let's say for argument's sake, it's a Zillow lead, right? The Zillow lead comes in, it automatically gets imported into your follow-up boss via a pixel, I guess, or something similar to that. And then follow-up boss determines that it came from Zillow, and anything from Zillow, depending on the action plan, goes into that specific action. And it immediately communicates with that lead, stating, "Hey, I'm Joe Zingales. I'm the best thing since sliced bread, and yes, I can take care of you." And I'm joking here, but it just communicates with the lead immediately, so they know that you're on top of it. Because anybody in this industry knows the first 30 seconds to a minute, you have to be right on it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they're going to go to somebody else.
Yeah. So for new leads, do you utilize automations for any other portion of the life cycle, like for nurturing or re-engaging leads? Or
yes. So we have a lot of non-responsive leads that I think you provided us with an automation for non-responsive people. So we implement that after a certain period of time. But yes, we utilize several of the automations in there.
And since implementing those, which, by the way, when was that? When did we work together? Do you remember?
I want to say maybe March, April.
Okay.
May have been earlier.
So about 4 months.
Yeah.
So since implementing that, what results have you seen?
Incredible results. It's one of those things that you set it and forget it, but yet I'm not insinuating that you forget it, but it just takes a lot of the legwork out of the real estate out of your day. I am still very much in follow-up boss, just making sure who the automation communicated with, and just in case they respond back. You want to be there with a live response. But it's been amazing. The amount of conversion has been really good.
That's great. What about your daily workflow? How does that look now in Follow Up Boss? Do you utilize the smart list, or how do you manage your follow-ups?
I live by my smart list. I can give you an example of my morning. I wake up, I take my dogs, I have 2 pugs, I take them out, let them do their thing. I come in, make a cup of coffee. I sit down in front of my laptop. It's now 5:30 in the morning, and I'm in my smart list, and I'm checking MLS for any property matches to my clients, and boom, right back into follow up boss, communicating with those people. I don't care what time it is. I'm not sending texts out, but I can schedule texts to go out. So by 8 o'clock, I've communicated with pretty much everybody that I had to communicate with, and then it's meetings in the morning and showings in the afternoon.
So you start work at 5:30.
Pretty much.
What time do you wake up?
About 5.
What time do you go to sleep?
Oh, 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yep.
No, I'm garbage after that.
Yeah. I can't do it. I'm a night owl. I try and I can't go to sleep before 10 o'clock. But then I can't wake up at 5. So it's either I gotta work later or I need to
Yeah.
get used
10 o'clock
to
is like midnight to
going
me.
to sleep. Oh, yeah. It does feel like that too for me as well. Yeah. Well, I've got a 4-year-old daughter and kids wear you out for sure.
Yes, they do.
Well, last question for you as we wrap up the conversation. And this is something that may take you a second to think about because it's off topic here. But is there one strategy or lesser known tip that you've implemented in your brokerage and your real estate business that's had an impact in some way? Whether it's an accountability strategy, lead management, something you do for client retention and referrals, or just overall increasing the business's growth, what is one tip you can think of that's helped you tremendously?
You said it. It's going to take me a second. Um, Look, the one thing that I can stress is just be consistent. Consistency will get you there. That's something I learned that I had to do with Follow Up Boss. Even with all of the action plans, even with the automations, even with all of that, you still have to be consistent enough to get in there and do the work. Yes, the work's going to be smarter, not harder, but it takes you to put that effort in. And once you're consistent, it's gonna develop into a habit. And the first day that you're not waking up and going into follow up boss, you're gonna feel out of your element because that's how I feel. I cannot continue my real estate career without follow up boss and without your help. So I applaud you. I thank you. I don't know where I'd be without you guys, but you guys are awesome.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, that's something that we stress as well is automation and AI, even though you mentioned you've implemented AI for lead generation and Follow Up Boss has AI elements as well. And automation, they're not going to replace a human. And if they ever did, everyone would be out of job. You'd be out of job, I'd be out of job, we would all have no jobs. So
Right.
automation will never replace us. It still requires consistency.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate your time, Joe. It was very good insights. I'm sure people will find this chat very helpful.